Hey guys, thanks for checking out another one of our videos. Today we're talking about the 2003 draft class. Now this was arguably the best draft class of all time, but we think you should be able to judge that for yourself. So in today's video, we're going to go over every pick in the top 10 of this draft and show you how things turned out for them. Hey, make sure you stick around until the end of the video to find out which player was taken number 1 overall. We'll start with the 10th overall selection in the 2003 draft class, and that was Jarvis Hayes. Hayes was selected by the Washington Wizards to back up Jerry Stackhouse in the rotation. In his rookie year, Hayes averaged 9.6 points in 42 starts and played an average of 29.2 minutes a game. He upped his scoring to 10.2 points a game during his second year, but had a horrible knee injury that kept him out for quite a while. During that recovery period, he apparently had gained a significant amount of weight, but was able to get right back at it again and onto the court. He never surpassed 10 points a game throughout the rest of his career, and eventually the Wizards chose not to re-sign him when his rookie deal was over. He did get a veteran minimum contract from the Detroit Pistons the next year, averaging 6.7 points per game, but wasn't re-signed to that team during the offseason either. He then joined the New Jersey Nets for 2 years after that and operated as their sixth man. He even played the power forward position for some games, a spot he'd never played in before his time there. After those 2 years, he left the NBA entirely and started to play international basketball in Europe. He spent the rest of his playing days with a few different international rosters before finally retiring from the sport altogether. And moving on to the 9th overall pick in this vaunted draft class, we've got Michael Sweetney. The New York Knicks were the team that drafted him, but sadly he didn't last very long with that team. The Knicks were incredibly impatient with this young man and only held onto him for 2 years before trading him away to the Chicago Bulls. Mike only played in 42 games during his rookie year and battled some weight issues, but it was surprising to see the Knicks move on from such a high selection in a recent draft so quickly. He never did make a single appearance during the regular season with the Bulls and was subsequently released once his rookie contract expired. He chose to join the Boston Celtics during the Summer League after that and was even invited to their training camp. He did sign to the team but got waived right after, then was signed again and then cut again. This was about the last straw for Sweetney, as he decided to take his talents overseas to Puerto Rico's basketball league. He played for multiple teams internationally, but never chose to come back to the NBA. Nowadays, you can find Mike coaching a varsity basketball team at Yeshiva University. Next up, the 8th overall pick was TJ Ford. Ford was drafted by the Milwaukee Bucks and was compared to Magic Johnson and Larry Bird ahead of the draft. He averaged 7.1 points and 6.5 assists per game during his rookie year and was named to the NBA All-Rookie Second Team. He did suffer an injury towards the end of that year and missed 26 games though, and that injury ended up being worse than originally anticipated. It was diagnosed as a contusion of the spinal cord and was career-threatening. He missed the entire next year and then some, but eventually rejoined the team he was drafted on. And he looked great in his return, but the team was moving in a different direction, I guess, so they ended up trading him over to the Toronto Raptors. Ford partnered with Chris Bosh in the starting lineup and had some great years together, even making the playoffs a time or two. However, he had some issues in their last playoff series loss. He was mad that he wasn't being played towards the end of games, and he refused to become a backup. This led to him being traded over to the Indiana Pacers, and he started off well, but the team was just not good enough at the time, with Indiana not even making the postseason. He spent one more year there before the team opted not to re-sign him, and he instead signed with the San Antonio Spurs. He got hit hard in the back by an elbow, and it caused him so much pain due to that spinal injury that he ended up retiring mid-season in 2011. Moving on now to pick number 7, Kirk Hinrich. Hinrich was selected by the Chicago Bulls and was a surprising pick to say the least. Everybody thought he would go late in the first round and not nearly this early, but the Bulls knew that they needed a point guard, and Hinrich was perfect for them. He made it onto the all-rookie first team in his first year and was the Bulls' MVP. He did end up moving to the shooting guard position in his second year because the team started the year off 0-9. That move wasn't horrible for him though, as they ended up finishing 47-35 and claiming the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference. They were knocked out in the first round though by the Washington Wizards. Hinrich spent the next 7 years with Chicago, functioning as the lead and backup point guard really wherever his team needed him to be. Eventually, the Wizards traded for Hinrich, and he averaged 11.1 points during his single season with the Wizards before again being traded to the Atlanta Hawks. He had shoulder surgery during that next offseason, and by the end of his second year with that team, he left to re-sign with the Bulls again. He spent 4 more years in Chicago and then was again traded to, guess what, the Hawks. He would end up finishing his career in Atlanta, but Chicago was clearly his home. Now we're on to the 6th pick in the draft, and that was big man Chris Kaman. The Los Angeles Clippers were the team to take a chance on Kaman. He played in all 82 games his rookie year and averaged 6.1 points and 5.6 rebounds in that span. He was second among rookies in total block shots and was named to the Rookie All-Star team. He improved all of his numbers during his second year and was progressing every year. He was involved with the Clippers' first winning record in 14 long years and had 29 double-doubles in just one season. He also made it onto the All-Star team at one point as a reserve. After that, the Clippers traded him over to the New Orleans Hornets in exchange for Chris Paul. Kaman had a few great games as a Hornet, but the team wanted to trade him from the start. They ended up holding on to him, and he left in free agency to sign with the Dallas Mavericks. He then joined Dirk Nowitzki and played pretty well for a while, but again left and signed with the Los Angeles Lakers. Yet again, that one-year deal didn't work out, and he ended up signing with the Portland Trail Blazers right after that. This was the team he stuck with at that point for the most part. He played with them for 3 years and was a big help in the locker room, and that's where he ended his NBA career. Now, the 5th pick of the draft is where things get interesting. The Miami Heat decided to draft Dwayne Wade. Wade was instantly impactful on the team and really broke out when the Heat traded with the Lakers for Shaquille O'Neal. In his 3rd year with Miami, Wade carried the team all the way into the postseason. He battled through severe injuries throughout the playoffs and eventually made it into the NBA Finals against the Dallas Mavericks. Wade dropped playoff highs in scoring and won an NBA championship, even being named the Finals MVP and the 5th youngest player in history to get that award. The next couple years saw him limited due to a few various injuries, but he was able to get back on track in 2008 and carried that comeback for the next few years. He was the NBA scoring champion, averaging 30.2 points per game, but the team lost in the postseason a couple times. Then, LeBron James and Chris Bosh joined up with Wade, and of course, they won back-to-back championships together. After a few years, they all kind of broke up. Wade joined his hometown team, the Chicago Bulls, for 2 years because of an issue with the Heat, and he signed with the Cleveland Cavaliers for another year after that. Then he chose to come back to Miami to end his career, playing a few more years there before finally hanging up the shoes. Stick around until the end of the video to find out which player was taken number 1 overall. The 4th pick in the 2003 draft was Chris Bosh. The Raptors drafted him, and he had to play out of position to start his career. But he ended up being the leader of that Toronto team after Vince Carter left, and he led them in scoring and rebounding for quite a while. Bosh struggled at some points the next couple years with a mediocre team, and then later flipped over to the Miami Heat to join Wade and James, as we just talked about. Bosh was an integral part of those back-to-back championship victories, but then ended up losing the next NBA Finals he was a part of. Bosh missed a lot of time due to a blood clot in his leg after the Big Three broke up, and he made a few comeback attempts the next couple years, none of them really being successful. It turns out that those blood clots were a career-ending illness, and he was forced to step away. The Heat, though, still retired his jersey later on and immortalized him in franchise history. Now we're on to the 3rd pick in this loaded draft. This time, it's Carmelo Anthony. The Denver Nuggets grabbed him here, and he spent the first 8 years of his career as a member of their roster. He was clearly one of the most talented scorers in NBA history and was on numerous All-Star and All-NBA teams already. But the team lost in the first round of the playoffs every year but one, and Melo got tired of it and started to demand a trade. He was sent over to the New York Knicks, where he was again the leader of that team and by far the best overall player. In about 7 years, he only won 1 playoff series yet again, and that's when he was traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder and had a decent year, but again his team was bounced in the first round of the playoffs. Then he was traded to the Atlanta Hawks, who bought him out and sent him to free agency, where he signed with the Houston Rockets. He was surprisingly released from the team, and after a year off, he got back into the league with the Portland Trail Blazers. He made the playoffs twice there and lost in, you guessed it, the first round both of those years. Recently, though, he left to sign with the Los Angeles Lakers in an attempt to finally break through and win a championship. Of course, he's still playing today. Alright, now we're on to number 2. This could be one of the worst draft picks of all time. It was Darko Milicic, a player who's widely forgotten about in this whole class. He was drafted by the Detroit Pistons, and he didn't play much to start his career. And that lack of playing time had a lot of people unhappy. Nobody really understood why he averaged just 5.8 minutes a game, and then the team just decided to trade him to the Orlando Magic after 3 completely uneventful years. He did get more playing time out there and had decent numbers, but left in free agency to sign with the Memphis Grizzlies. He wasn't playing at his peak to start that year, and eventually the team limited his playing time because of it. Then he grew unhappy with his role and didn't want to be there anymore. Milicic was flipped over to the Knicks 2 years later, and that's when he said he didn't want to play in the league anymore. Instead, he wanted to go over to Europe for a year. And he did that, but then later came back and played for the Minnesota Timberwolves, who signed him to a 4-year deal. He only lasted there 2 years, though, before he was clearly struggling and sent over to the Boston Celtics. Boston ended up releasing Milicic after he demanded to be let go due to personal issues. He never returned to the NBA and retired shortly after that. He had so much potential, but could go down as one of the biggest draft busts ever. Alright guys, we finally made it to the number 1 pick in the 2003 draft class, and it's, of course, none other than LeBron James. There's not much to say about James that everybody doesn't already know. He was the most hyped up player ever out of college or high school, and he proved that with the Cleveland Cavaliers. His numbers with Cleveland were off the charts, and his teams were always making the playoffs. He won MVP awards and quickly started to become one of the greatest players of all time. Then James left the Cavaliers to join the Miami Heat and win back-to-back championships with them in a very controversial move. After 4 years with the Heat, he left and returned to the Cavaliers with one purpose: bringing his hometown a championship. And of course, he did just that in that historic comeback down 3-1 against the Golden State Warriors. And he did make the NBA Finals 2 more years, but lost both of those series. Nowadays, he's a member of the Los Angeles Lakers with fellow 2003 draft class member Carmelo Anthony. LeBron is now looking to grab his 5th ring in this upcoming season and still looks like a dude who's playing at the peak of his career. That just about does it for this video, but hey, if you guys enjoyed it, please be sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe for more content just like this. We hope to see you around in our next video. Check out everything that's happened to Carmelo Anthony since 2003 next.